It's Friday, so you know what that means. Cody and I take a trip over to the YouTube comment, and the Rams released Bobby Wagner. What does that mean for the Houston Texans, if any?
And to tie it all in, we want to develop a great team here that we can deliver wins to the city of Houston. We want to deliver a championship here to the city of Houston, and that's what it'll be about.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily Houston Texans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Friday episode of the Locked On Texan podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm John Hickman. Of course, I'm joined by none other than Cody Davis. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday,
Saturday, sometimes Saturday.
Back home. Sometimes Saturday, I'm back home. As you guys can see, my background is back. Had a good trip over the past couple of days. But I'm back home and I'm back ready to talk Houston Texans. Of course, before we start off, I just want to say that there's a image floating around on Twitter of Quentin Johnston, the wide receiver from TCU, and his NFL comparison on
What did I say a couple days ago?
It's Andre Johnson. Listen, man, I don't know what strand it is. I don't know if it's even a strand. It could be dust. I don't know what it is. But whatever y'all smoking out there, what my man Stephen A. Lay off the weed.
Look,
no job if I've ever seen one.
You know how I feel about Quentin. I think he might be, if not the best, the second best wide receiver coming out of the draft this year. It's crazy to compare him to Andre Johnson, but what I will say is this, John: we are now entering an era to where some of these people on social media, man, they just don't know. And Andre Johnson is one of those people, man. You had to be there for it to understand. So that's why I didn't take it that far. It's almost like when people compare, certain players switching over to basketball to like Tracy McGrady. Like, it's one of those things. Like a couple days ago with Vince Young, like you had to have been there to truly understand. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Really quick.
I wonder how many people were around for this franchise when they had Don Capers as their head coach. By the way, Don Capers debuted a new hairstyle. It looked like a real life Photoshop hairstyle, as he is now the Carolina Panthers senior defensive assistant. But how many of those people that are Texan fan now was around with Don Capers, when he was the head coach of this team? And the David Carr days, right? The early days of Andre Johnson before Houston was able to go on their early 2010 run, So let's calm down on the comparisons of any of these receivers coming out of the eventual Hall of Fame wide receiver Andre Johnson, who I believe should get in, if not next year, in the next 2 years, man. So let's go on over to these YouTube comments. Jonathan Caraway. Cody, you don't like this one. Please change the intro from D'Amico's press conference to Andre Johnson's infamous uppercut to Cortland Finnegan. I like that one.
I like it. Unfortunately, we can't do that due to copyright reasons. I mean, trust me, I would love to start off the show like that, especially while we continuously to try to help Andre Johnson get into the Hall of Fame. Some people think he should be in the Hall of Fame alone just off of that fight. But unfortunately, we can't do it due to copyright reasons. I'm sorry, my guy.
Listen, I think we know this person, Zay Neal. And I'm not sure if this is the same Zay that we went to college with, but if it is,
it might be.
Shout out to my man Zay, man, who is getting married, coming up here soon, man. So shout out to my man. Shout out to his fiance now. She will be his wife. But nobody is trading up to number 1 to take Bryce. Texas needs all those picks. I'm with him on that, man. I think that's a dumb decision. By the way, if it's not that Zay Neal, and if we just gave you this backstory to the actual Zay Neal it is, I'm sorry. You let us know who you are.
It's still I got though.
It's still I got. But yeah, I 100% agree, man. We don't need to here in Houston. They don't need to trade up those picks. They need their picks not only for this year, I think for next year. And I'll tell you why. Like, not those first round picks, unless there's a move that makes, it's an offer on the table you can't refuse, i.e. like a Lamar Jackson, like something like that. Then, yeah, you go ahead and make that trade. But in this draft alone, no. You wait at number 2. There's going to be a quarterback that can potentially change your franchise at number 2, just like it'll be at number 1. You got the cream of the crop coming out, I think, in the first 2 picks at quarterback. And, again, you worked hard for those picks because of how long you had to wait out for Deshaun Watson. Enjoy what you worked for. Enjoy the fruits of your labor. And stay at number 2, pick your quarterback, whether it be Bryce Young or CJ. We'll see when the draft rolls around. But don't trade those picks.
This is one of those off-season narratives I just don't understand. I think that would be more of a discussion if it was just Bryce coming out or if it was just CJ coming out. But you have 2 potential franchise quarterbacks. Yeah. And in an event where, let's say the Colts trade up to 1 and take Bryce, do you just take CJ with the next pick? Or in an event the Colts move up and they take CJ, do you just take Bryce with the next pick? Like, I don't understand the notion of just moving up 1 spot ahead. And who knows? The Chicago Bears, they're high, I believe, on Will Anderson. So there's still a possibility to where they won't even trade that. Yeah, you can still have your pick of the best 2 quarterback prospects. I get it. I understand it. It's a little bit more comfortable when you have that first overall pick. Unfortunately, we all know what happened on the very last game of the regular season while we are not in that position. But however, it's not going to be the end of the world if the Houston Texans just wait it out. And trust me, I totally understand. Nick Caserio will not do that because he understands, look, if one quarterback isn't there at 2, we'll just ride with the other.
My man X Christianity 94X. I don't know. You guys keep me young with some of these YouTube names. But he commented and said, height isn't everything. This isn't Madden. You don't need receivers over 6'2". Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Devontae Adams, and DeAndre Hopkins are all under 6'2". And this was on the podcast where we discussed who's going to catch the ball when we were looking at the wide receiver prospects. Listen, I agree with you on that one. Some of these guys, and I'm going to be honest with you, I am interested to see what Johnson's 40 time will be. If he runs a 40 out of TCU, I think that if he runs with his height, if he runs a sub 4.3, then the conversation does change. And not only if he runs a sub 4.3, but if Jackson is Smith Njigma, or any of the other guys, if they run one of those 4.4 sub 4.4s or 4.5, and I think that Smith Njigma may possibly, if he runs a 40. I'm not sure how much that hamstring has healed, although I'm under the impression myself that he could have played last year. He was just saving himself for the draft. And I'm not necessarily mad at that. But if he does run a 4.4 or run a 40, then I don't think he's going to be as fast as some of the other wide receiver prospects that's coming out that we consider top 4 or 5 in this draft. But if Quentin Johnson goes out there and runs a sub 4.3, then the conversation will change. But again, I agree. I don't think you need one of these big, tall receivers to be effective on the outside. I think that if you get some of these guys, and Cody, you know how I stand on this, if you get some of these guys that can win at the line of scrimmage off the ability to run routes, off the ability to have one of those perfected releases, then I think that's a plus now in this game compared to some of those bigger 6'3", 6'4" receivers. If you're looking for a delicious treat but don't want all of the fats and calories, then you got to try a Built Bar. Listen, we just got through the holidays. everybody's goal right now this year is to eat and live a little healthier, right? And if you're like me, you want to eat healthier, you want to live healthier, but you do not want to compromise the taste, then I've got something for you. You gotta try these Built Bar, man. Listen, with Built Bar, healthy is actually tasty. They're so delicious, you won't even think they're good for you. Perfect for your New Year's resolutions, but not even just a New Year resolution. Perfect for a new lifestyle, a cleaner and healthier lifestyle. What makes Built Bar so good, for starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. On top of that, they come in unbelievably amazing flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, coconut almond. And the other day in our Locked On group chat, I saw somebody play around with the idea of a donut flavor. They're only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and a whopping 17 grams of protein. You can head to your nearest Walmart today or Sam's Club. Just walk into the pharmacy section, grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4 box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs. And like I said, if you're close to the Sam's Club, run in and grab the 13 box with our hit flavors brownie, batter, and churro. You'll thank me later. Make sure you check out Built Bar online at built.com. Again, that is built.com.
Welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen, to this Friday installment of Locked On Texans. And over the next couple of weeks, we'll be talking a lot about free agency. As free agency get closer and closer. Once again, the legal tampering period is on March 13th. So, of course, John and myself, we're going to be playing around with several ideas on which players make sense for the Houston Texans. Doesn't make sense to put a lot of money into this position group and not so much into this other position group. Kind of started it on yesterday, John. I think you nailed a lot of good points in terms of how the Houston Texans can improve their defensive line unit. I'm under the impression that when you take a look at the defensive side of the ball, especially when you take a look at that front seven, that is where I believe the most money should go into. Once again, Houston Texans last season gave up an average of 170 yards on the ground over the last 3 years. I believe it was like 140, 150 yards on the ground per game. With that being said, on yesterday, surprisingly, the Los Angeles Rams released one of the best linebackers over the last 10 years, Bobby Wagner. He is now out there on the market. Like I mentioned, you got to improve that front seven. John, I would not be mad if the Houston Texans have an opportunity to go out there and try to bring Bobby Wagner in, give him about a 2 to 3 year deal. Yes, he is getting up there in age, but last year with the Los Angeles Rams, given everything that they had going on, he still proved to be a very reliable, very solid, very good player. Last year finished with 6 sacks, and according to Pro Football Focus, he finished with a run defensive grade of 91.1. Of course, he's one of those guys I believe that you could just plug him in wherever. He's going to give you great production. And not only that, like I mentioned, whatever veterans you go out and get in free agency, I do believe it's very crucial to see how is he going to help the younger guys that's here in that position group on the defensive side of the ball, and just bringing in another veteran leadership presence, especially one that's going to demand the respect of a Bobby Wagner. So I know it might cost a shiny penny, but if that is the case, I wouldn't be mad if the Houston Texans go out and try to bring him in.
I'm against it. I'm against it. So realistically, I don't think Bobby Wagner. It's kind of like Javon Hargraves.
Yeah,
those two players, Hargraves coming off of a Super Bowl run with Philly. Those two players are some of the more established guys in the league, and they're going to want to go to a situation where the situation is much more established, and they have an opportunity to compete. Maybe more so Hargraves, because he hasn't actually won a Super Bowl like Bobby Wagner has. But for one, I don't see it being too realistic that Bobby Wagner chooses Houston. If it does happen, I'll eat my words, and I think that'll be a great opportunity for Houston. Like, I'm not against it because I think it'll be a bad signing for Houston. And I'm not sure how much money it'll cost. He's 32 years old, but 33 by the time the season will start. If there was an idea and thought right now in their front office, I'm wondering how long would they sign him to? A 1-year deal, 2-year deal? If it's a 1-year deal, are you a little bit more on the cheaper end? If it's a 2-year deal, do you kind of backload it a little bit to give yourself some flexibility this year in free agency? I'm not 100% sure. But I do think that all of the points you made for Bobby Wagner to come to Houston makes 100% sense, right?
Yeah.
You have the respect in the locker room, respect on and off the field, all of that. But I just don't think it's realistic. I don't see Bobby Wagner wanting to come to Houston now that he's released. He's a free agent. He can sign wherever he wants. And overall, I think that you don't want to get too carried away with some of these veterans like a Bobby Wagner, because if you do decide to bring in Bobby Wagner, I am interested in the money. And if you decide to pay a 32-year-old linebacker who is coming off an amazing season with the Rams, how much of that do you have left on the table to pay, I think, more dire needs, right? I look at Azir Al-Shair out of, with the 49ers. I think that's a more realistic signing. Already has a relationship with D'Amico Ryans and some of the guys on the coaching staff. And I think that it would be better for Houston to focus on players where you can get multi-year deals done, like a Shair, like a Hargraves, which is why I would still be big on that. Like some of the other free agents that we've talked about on and off this show, instead of a Bobby Wagner, to where you may have to sink a lot of money into for 1 year. So I'm for multi-year deals right now, and I don't think Bobby Wagner is a multi-year deal player. Not for a franchise to where he's 32. This team may not be super competitive and relevant again and actually playing for something by the time any contract he would receive is up.
And that is why I place a lot of hefty emphasis on if the Houston Texans have the opportunity. And I know it's going to cost a shiny penny. And John, I 100% agree with you. I don't think it's realistic, but if the opportunity presents itself, and if Nick Caserio and D'Amico Ryans, are open to paying that type of money, because I'm pretty sure it's going to cost a pretty penny to get somebody like Bobby Wagner in. But once again, when you just take a look at go ahead.
What would be a pretty penny for him? I'm gonna look this up real quick. But no,
look up his market value.
I'm serious. Like, what would be too much for Bobby Wagner?
The only, talent wise, I'm good with it. But the only thing that I would be concerned about is more so the age. He's 32, if I'm not mistaken. And even if he came to Houston, I don't think he'd be like on a 1-year deal. He's not a 1-year prove it guy. I would say it'd be like a multi-year, 3 years,
So with the Rams, he signed a 5-year deal worth $50 million. Now, it was smart on the Rams to release him because their draft and cap situation is terrible in LA. They got a lot of cap casualties, but they're going to have to figure out who's going to stay and who's going to go. And I'm interested to see what they do with Matthew Stafford. But he was due 12.75 this season if he would have been on the Rams roster.
So I would say a team like I'm sorry to cut you off, but I would say a team like the Texans will probably have to come close or match that 12.75 because
it's too much money.
I look at it, and that's why I said that, because I look at it as a situation. Let's say if he go to the Bills, a team that's based on the Cups of winning the championship. If you add him to that, and this is only for an example, they're not going to give him that 12.5 or come close to it. They're going to fit him into the salary cap, and he's going to have to take a pay cut to go to a more competitive team. But if he goes to a rebuilding team like Houston, it's going to have to be a situation where you have to come close to either matching at 12.5 or just come close to it. Or I'm not going to say surpass it, but that is where I could see a veteran player like a Bobby Wagner is how he's going to choose whether or not to go to a rebuilding situation or more so a team where he can instantly go into and compete for a championship.
His base salary this year was going to be $7.5 million with a signing bonus of $1 million, a roster bonus of $3.5 million. So, okay, we look at the base salary alone, 7.5. I'm kind of worried about that, and
But one of the best linebackers over the past decade.
no, he is. No, you're right. You're right.
So it's like, yes, you will
But
be
again,
selling
like
out money, but
signing a player like Bobby Wagner, and I would take this to compare it to Javon Hargraves. Signing a Javon Hargraves is you instantly upgrading at a need that you need to upgrade at. Right? I honestly think so. Signing up Bobby Wagner at this stage in his career is kind of like we need to put ourselves over the top at this position. So I don't think the Houston Texans right now are in a situation where they need to put themselves over the top at linebacker, comparing that to upgrading the defensive tackle position where they really need that help at. And so that's why I justify Hargraves over Bobby Wagner. And that's why I look at $7.5 million as a base salary for Bobby Wagner, who again had a great year last year to be 32 years old playing the linebacker position. Um, and I still think he has a lot left in his tank to prove. But for Houston, I wouldn't allocate that amount of money to a linebacker position when I think I can use that $7.5 million to maybe upgrade or bring in players at two positions and maybe not want to sink it into one as a base salary. One. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. You've heard us talk a lot about the mobile game app, and I can tell you how much fun I had competing against my fellow Locked On NFL host. Shout out to CC, Chris Carter of the Locked On Steelers, who won the Locked On Conference, Locked On Championship. Now it's your turn to compete. No more excuses. It's time to compete in this game and go out there and make a run at the championship. If you've ever dreamed of becoming an NFL general manager and managing your own football franchise, then your dream can come true in this game. Listen, this game is definitely going to be for you guys out there that think you can do Nick Caserio's job. You could have done what Rick Smith did. You'll be able to manage every strategic aspect of your game, play through the seasons, play through your team, lead your team to glory, and build a dynasty. With Ultimate Football GM, you're responsible for controlling the destiny of your franchise by hiring the right coaches and coordinators, trading players, and navigating your franchise through free agency and the draft and all of the ups and downs of a season, all in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Football GM is completely free and playable offline. Play on the go as you want, when you want to. Our Locked On Texan listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using promo code Locked On in all caps in the game store. That's Locked On in all caps in the game store. So make sure you check it out today. Download the game. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the App Store. Welcome back, Locked On Texan listeners and viewers out there on YouTube. Listen, so PFF, they dropped a kind of a top 16 grading of the rookie offensive line class. And of the top 16, Keon Green was nowhere to be found.
it's not surprising.
It's not surprising at all. You had Ed Ingram on there, Max Mitchell on there, Cole Strange, who I had to watch play a lot of bad football for the New England Patriots on there. Cordell Volson was on there. Listen, some of these grades got down to 53.3. When I look at Keon Green and what he was able to do or lack thereof last year, the young man had a very rough year. His PFF grade, and take it for what it's worth, when you look at PFF, was a 37.7. We talk a lot here on the show about D'Amico Ryans being a defensive coordinator that is also a developing coach. That DC is what I'm really looking forward to. And we also discussed how he brought in Chris Strouser over from Indianapolis to now be the Houston Texans' next offensive line coach. If there is any player on this roster that needs development in every sense of the word, it's Keon Green.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you, man. We talk about it a lot here on this show. Keon Green, I know those numbers sound alarming to a lot of people, especially considering, the moves you have to make in order to get him. I believe it was at the number 15 pick of last year,
They
if I'm not
traded
mistaken.
back. They traded
Yeah,
back.
so it's alarming, but please, ladies and gentlemen, keep in mind this is a rookie who missed half of training camp. Had a rough start to his rookie campaign. Then when it seemed like he was finally getting going, I don't think there was probably a rookie in the league that went through the gauntlet of defensive linemen he had to defend. And by the way, this also came midway through the 2022 campaign when we was looking out there on the field saying, where's the effort and the lack of talent for everybody out there on the football field. So you also got to take that into consideration. And I spoke to former coach Lovie Smith several times and about the development of Keon Green as well as former offensive coordinator Pep Hamilton. And the one thing that they always said, both in press conferences and behind closed doors when I spoke to him, was just give him time. At the end of the day, yes, we believe, and that wasn't just for Keon Green, it was also for guys like Derek Stingley, Christian Harris, Damian Pierce, who exploded from day one. But you have to give these rookies time, and please keep that in mind with the next selection of rookies at the Houston Texans draft, because even though we want them to come out and have a very explosive career from the jump, it's going to take a lot of these rookies time to get accustomed to the NFL, especially if you have a situation like Keon Green where you came into training camp hurt. You got even more hurt with a concussion. So that limit your time, no preseason, and then by the time you really start getting reps, you are going up against some of, if not the best defensive linemen.
No, we
in the
went
league.
up against the. I mean, it was Dexter Lawrence, to Leonard Williams, to Jeffrey Simmons. Played the Eagles in that stretch.
Yeah.
You talked about Fletcher
It was
Cox and
rough.
Hargraves,
It was rough,
and
man.
then the Commanders. Listen, he went through it. He was also 21 years old last year, right? And so when I look at Green, man, I think the realization is, yeah, he got to get better, right?
Mhm.
I think Green is a player that he has the tools, and I think he may be more so fit for right guard, but he has the tools to move bodies out the way to create some running lanes for the running backs. I am really worried about his pass protection, which is where I think he needs to get substantially better. But it's not like it's impossible. This isn't a player that's been in the league 3 to 4 years, and it's just like this isn't Eric Flowers. Where Eric Flowers had to be moved from tackle to guard, and it still didn't work out for him for the most part. This isn't one of those situations. This is a young man who's 21, trying to figure it out, who was dealing with injuries before the season starts. And now he will have a full offseason. You can knock on wood. Hopefully he doesn't go through any injuries that set back his development this offseason. Honestly, I think he needs to be in the lab right now, and that's okay, right? Of course.
Oh, he is.
Yeah, and that's good. Like, live your life, but you got some work to do, young man. But
I don't know.
think he can do it.
I don't know if I shared this on the podcast or not, but a couple weeks ago, he took the first shot at the Rockets game, and I had an opportunity to chop it up with him really quick. And I asked him how his offseason going, and he told me, he took maybe like a week off, and he has been in the lab ever since. So you're looking at him being in the lab, working on his game, working on his body ever since mid to the end of January. So that alone lets me know that he's going to be in better shape going into his sophomore campaign, and it also helps that he's excited about
we looked at durability as an issue for him, not being able to stay on the field. But I think it's not shape, but his ability to be out there and play through a lot of those reps. You call it shape. He just was I wouldn't necessarily say he was out of shape. I don't know what the word I'm thinking of, but being out on the field, not durability. You guys get it. Like he needs to be, he needs to get in shape to where he's out there consistently playing. And I thought that was an issue for him. Like he was gassed a lot of times when he was out on the field. So shout out to that young man. We'll see a better version of him this year, hopefully under Chris Strouser and the full offseason of just, getting stronger and getting to where he needs to be. Thank you guys for stopping by here today on the Locked On Texans podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Locked On Texans, and also subscribe to the Locked On Texans YouTube page. Tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend. We are 50 subs away from 3K. So y'all tell them big boys out there to follow us.
And as always, I'm your host, Cody M. Davis.
No, I need credit for that one.
Yeah, that was good. That was good.
Something. I know it was corny, but
as always, I'm your host, Cody M. Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at CodyDavis_24. Once again, it's Cody COTYDAVIS_24. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.